Music is sick. No, music is dying. Music is dying. And I made a vow to save it, to save it.
Music is just a word. Welcome to the Big 1-0. Since this 10th episode is coming so long after the 9th one, I think I should probably recap a little bit from episode 9, which is going to be quite easy because the message of number 9, to make a long story short, is that music is like a Pandora's box that has been blown wide open. I don't mean this in the demonic sense, by the way. Those of you familiar with the story will know that it was evils and hardships that came out of the jar when Pandora opened it. But in the centuries of retelling the story, we've ended up with a Pandora's box meme that mostly gets applied to situations that are open-ended, or situations that feature boundless possibility. Situations where you need only question one thing, and it opens a floodgate of further questions, considerations, and uncertainties. Music, here in the year 2025, is just about anything and everything that you can put the word music on. I'm not trying to make an argument about when Pandora's box opened up. Was it with the introduction of AI? Was it when sampling was invented? Or when the synth was invented? Or was it the internet that did it? Take your pick. Or has it been open for much longer than that? Did Pandora's box open when the classical era gave way to the romantic era? Or when the Renaissance era gave way to the Baroque era, if you keep going farther back? Or could it have been when colonization reached its climax with the European invasions into the Americas? Doubtless, this has been responsible for a huge flood of unique music. And of course, if we ask, what was it that harkened in this era of anything goes in music? What was the point where music became just anything and everything? This may reveal more about the person asking the question than about the topic. If it's true that we live in a cultural melting pot, then what you would consider a cause or a byproduct of the melting pot state versus what you consider to be foundational, this will be pretty particular to your taste and your subjectivity. No matter who you are, I think you'll have an opinion about things that are more core to music and things that are more fringe to music. Part of my argument is that the musical Pandora's box couldn't have always been open. Music had to be a more concise, more cohesive range of behaviors at some point in history or prehistory. Like a river that's got to have some source somewhere if you walk far enough upstream. I think if you went back far enough, there wouldn't have been much more to music than just singing, dancing, and drumming, maybe blowing on flutes made of bone. But as we add things into this mix, this group of behaviors, what we know as music will grow and diversify until there can be controversy about what even comprises music, until things are regularly passing as music that don't even have melody, harmony, rhythm, in some cases don't even contain any kind of sonic symmetry whatsoever, and things that don't even involve real live people. And with music scattering and proliferating in all possible directions in this way, we might cease to be able to converge within music. We might lose music as a common ground on which to convene, and we might become inundated in the ever-proliferating, ever-diverging, ever-conflicting worldviews brought upon us by language.
Music is just a word!
If you put the word music on enough different things, you eventually get to a state where all things are eligible for the title. And you eventually kind of lose any innate or intrinsic identity for music. And it ends up just getting confusing. I remember reading an article about which Christmas movie to watch, and it started with a little blurb about what defines a Christmas movie. And the authors offered up a few hints, but at the end of the spiel, the final defining characteristic of a Christmas movie was simply a movie that had references to Christmas in it. Similar to Christmas, music has become a jam-packed category that might be very well beyond saving from having circular definitions or recursive definitions.
As much as I might like to define music as a core list of human activities involving song and dance, and playing instruments and making sounds that are symmetrical in some way, there is really no final authority on what activities can wear the label music and what activities can't. My concern, and it is a very grave concern, is that if musical behaviors become too diluted with these extrinsic establishers of musical context, things that in and of themselves make no pretense of being music and are happy to identify as non-music, then the activities that do comprise music, or make a bid to comprise music, will come to lean on these extrinsic non-musical establishers of musical context. We might find ourselves incapable of making music without the familiar industry infrastructure of branding, marketing, promotions, the production, the staging, the generally talking about music with language, planning for upcoming music, negotiating the ownership and sales of past music, and generally conforming to what seems to be an emerging standard of putting energy into any and every music except for the music that's happening right here and now. And as much as I'm approaching this from a theoretical standpoint here for the purposes of my podcast, these concerns about our music culture are coming from a place of anything but theory. Very much in practice, I have constantly found that to make the intention to form a musical unit, or simply to make music with people in perpetuity, always seems to lead to endless dialogue, to the point where the music gets left behind. So, whether my experience is typical or atypical, I can't seem to start a band without everybody forgetting to play the music. And music is supposed to be this universal language, something to help us take a break from the madness of our natural languages. An alternative to talk, not a generator of talk, isn't it?
Once our musical Pandora's box opens up wide enough, the musical behaviors themselves may no longer be able to establish themselves as music. Music may cease to have self-evident value and identity.
Things might even become so polysemous that it becomes controversial to think that there ever was any self-evident intrinsic identity to music, or any incontrovertible properties of music not depending on outside forms of communication. If these things weren't in place, I don't think music would have ever evolved, and now I've just come across an interview where scientists are saying things that track with this.
A lot of these extrinsic contributions, by the way, fall into the language category, and we know from the French linguist Ferdinand de Saussure and others that language is an inherently negative form of communication. When we describe things and define things, what we're really bringing into focus is the negative space beyond these things. Saussure referred to language as a system of differences, and indeed, as I mentioned last episode, language, in contrast to music, seems to be the communication responsible for expressing what we wish to avoid in the world. So it just follows that a music culture that's dominated by language will be a culture where people are designing music along the lines of differentiation and proliferation, and where people make music to seek out the boundaries of what is music, rather than any kind of center or core of music.
Genres and categories within music, as well as the whole of music, can become overly dependent on the title, the definition, and the boundaries, meanwhile losing all connection with what was formerly the core of the art form. This has been the Big 1-0 of Music is Just a Word. I'm James Anderson. Stay tuned for episode 11, and also stay tuned for the soundtrack. Peace.